I'm Daava Mills with Daava Mills Consulting, and I do fractional and on-demand HR.
I'm Mikki Meisner with Kickin Cancer Washington, and we help people thrive through their cancer journey.
Mikki, I want to kind of fill you in while Dave and I were kind of waiting because we were talking about COVID times, and we were kind of getting into the whole aspect of school and other things. But Dava had such a great perspective, having the HR background that she does in her profession, and so it was really cool to kind of understand that perspective, like with your idea with the kids and
Yeah.
on three different kind of levels of.
Yeah, levels of. So, one of the things is in HR, we talk a lot about equity, equality, diversity. And everybody's probably seen there's a diagram where it's like there's three kids trying to watch a baseball game from behind a fence. So now there's not equality. Well, then they all get the same height of box, and that is
So
that's
sorry.
okay. No worries. So anyway, you have these three kids watching this game, but they're behind a fence. And so what you do is you would give them all a box to stand on. Well, the tall kid never needed the box. That's what equality looks like. Equity is the shortest kid got two boxes because they needed a little more of an up. So in the world of equity, like when it came to our kids while we were staying home, there were some kids that just needed to be with their peers. And there were some kids that were fine at home. And then there were kids like mine that when they finally said, well, we can let kids go back to school on a part-time basis, social distance, the second she was in school, like 2 4-hour days a week, everything came together. And it's like that in the world of HR. It's like if you want to get the same output from people, you can't give them the same tools.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was really interesting to watch that. And I was like, we could have done things differently. And the big thing was I talked to so many parents. I'm like, we have studies that show that kids in war-torn countries, they get caught up a lot faster than we think. Why were we so focused on English and math? Why weren't we focused on soft skill building during this time? Like, this would be a great time to allow kids to pursue things that otherwise they wouldn't have been pursuing. How to build video documents. There was actually one school for their drama class. That's what they did is they allowed them to take phones outside and build movies. And I was
Brilliant.
like, it was a way to allow them to engage in something that activated the brain, which
And
I'm
explore
sure
skills that they wouldn't have otherwise had the opportunity
exactly. And isn't that what equity is? If we want them all to be productive in society, eventually, why are we given a one slot solution? And it's like, I had talked to my therapist a while back, and I said, I've just come to realize that communication doesn't matter if you're in a relationship, doesn't matter if you're a parent, doesn't matter if you're at work. It's all the same fundamentals. It is all the same fundamentals. So anyway.
I have a quick question. So
Yeah.
how does your profession in what you do with HR, how does that kind of translate now with a lot of, because COVID changed so much with the workforce.
It did.
And there's so many people that work from home now still.
Right.
So how does that affect you and what you do?
Yeah, well, you have to realize, I forget what the percentage is off the top of my head, but I think it's between 50 and 60% of the workforce actually has to be in a physical space because manufacturing, there's just certain designations where people have to be in a certain space. I call it the gift of COVID. It allows people to call in sick. I remember once wanting to take a vacation. It was denied, and my boss was like, no, we need you. Actually, they didn't. They were in the middle of an acquisition, which was when my skill set was needed the least. I literally was having to go to work and twiddle my thumbs. And then I came down with the flu and double ear infection and bronchitis at the same time. So I dragged my ass to work and coughed my way through meetings because my body had been telling me to take a rest. And they did not think that was necessary.
Do that now.
Exactly. And I call it the gift of COVID. It is okay now for people to take a day off because they think they're going to get sick. For me, I got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And now the reason I'm in the studio today and not 4 weeks ago is because I got sick. And the second I get sick, if I don't call everything off that day for the next 3 days, I will be down for 2 to 3 weeks.
And start taking care of your body and giving it what it's asking for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, a lot of people got a much needed rest.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't one of those people, but
No.
I'm like looking online. I'm like, wow, y'all are baking cookies and, playing
Starting
games.
sourdough. No, I
Yeah.
had filed for divorce, and then a week later we were stay home, stay safe. So, yeah,
Like in the same house while you're
for
fabulous.
11 months. Yes,
Oh.
yes. I mean, we have a good co-parenting
I was going to say, what a great opportunity to
it is to figure it
learn
all
how
out,
to-
right? Yeah. So, yeah. So that's the gift of COVID.
the gift of COVID. I call it the Great Divide. It really it was, very divisive and showing people that it was very polarizing.
Oh yeah.
So people found themselves on one side of the fence or the other side of the fence, or one side of the belief system or the other side of the belief system. And I think we can all agree that we just need to, figure out how to heal our bodies, but that wasn't the actual conversation that was happening at the time.
Oh gosh, no. And that's what was happening at work. I had to explain to people as an HR practitioner, a lot of people think you're there to support the company. And then there are other people that think you're there to be an employee advocate. And we're just there really to make sure that laws and policies are in place. I have corrected just as many managers in my career as I have employees. It's just the way it works. And I started having people come to me with the vouchers to not have to have a vaccine. I didn't care.
It's not your job.
My job is to make sure the workplace is safe. Okay, here's the protocol if you don't get a vaccine. You still come to work. You just get tested every week. You wear a double mask. And everybody else who had a vaccine still had to get a mask. And we tested them too. It was just like we just created an environment of safety. And if anybody tested positive, all things stopped. Everything got wiped down. We had 70% alcohol everywhere. I mean, it was just, we had everything available at all times so that people could be productive. And we'll just make it happen the way it needs to happen. And I know some people, like I had like a business owner, well, everybody needs to do this. He goes, I don't understand why my daughter doesn't want to do this. And without getting into the politics, I sat down and talked to him. And again, it's not my job to care one way or the other. It's to ensure we have a safe environment. There's so many ways of doing that respects everybody's belief system.
Let's switch some gears.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to remember how Mikki and I met you.
We met at Ken Rosengren's Power Referral Partners.
That's right.
Because Mikki comes in, she said, I'm looking for people that just don't feel well. And it was just before COVID, the store space being built out. That's how we all met.
That's right. So that was like 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe late 2018.
No, it's definitely 2019.
No, we were doing the build out in 2019. We got the store
and
open.
I didn't start my business until 2019.
Okay.
So that's how we met.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, you and I met even prior to that.
Yeah, Tiger Chamber, I think.
Tiger Chamber, because of a friend of mine that was giving his presentation, a video production guy. Big shout out to Jason.
Yes, Left Brain Media.
I love the name of that.
It is. It's awesome.
And then you and I ended up having a one-to-one after that.
I think it was like at the Good Coffee Shop or something in
exactly.
Tiger. Yeah.
No, that was really cool.
Yeah. It was. It's funny as these circles kind of like, this like little Venn diagram that you kind of like little bubbles.
Vancouver gets smaller and smaller. And
yeah. Well, and at the time I was down in the Tigard area, and now I'm north of here. So and my community's still largely the same. Some bubbles have gotten bigger and some have gotten smaller, but yeah.
So we were just talking, I don't know if we recorded that, but we were talking because she knows Josh Carter.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was telling her that we just went to the Salvation Army
Fundraiser
event last night.
Yeah. Josh is good people.
Yeah, he's really cool. And
Really
he
bright.
got to share his story, and he utilized Salvation Army's services because he essentially was homeless for a while.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that's
Quite
why
a story.
his heart is so into helping Salvation Army?
I think every business person can learn a thing from Carter, Josh Carter. And the fact is his enthusiasm and his willingness to talk to people. I mean, up in my community, he is everywhere. His name is on everything. And he's just really built a nice little empire for himself.
Yeah,
it's very
cool.
inspiring.
Yeah, he called me he just Googled and found Triple M Productions. And called me up and, said, hey, look, I need videos for a lot of my clients. And so we just started working together. I've done two projects with him so far, which is really cool. And that's something that was new to me. To be able to create content for another marketing company, but not label it as my own.
Yeah. He talks to me the same way I talk to Mikki. So Mikki gets all confused, like, I love you, but I have no clue what you're talking about. That is me talking to Josh, right? He starts talking and I'm like, love the enthusiasm. Got no clue, but okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's a genius in his zone, as you're a genius in your zone, and you are, by the way. It's how we describe you. But yeah, we just wanted to go there and support him because he has such an amazing story, and I hadn't met him in person yet, so we drove up, and I'm really glad we went.
Yeah. Thursdays are tough.
Thursdays are brutal.
That's my long day.
Yeah.
I need to be able to, for at least an hour and 40 minutes or so.
What was odd this week is my Thursday was less than 8 hours. That never happens. Normally I plan for that to be a 14-hour day so that my Friday I'm done by noon, 1 o'clock, because my body fights back. If I don't do that and I go 2-3 days in a row, it's like, all right, you've overdone it. For every hour you've overdone it, 2 to 3 hours of sleep. So, okay.
Yeah.
we honor the body.
I do love sleep. I'm the gal that I lay down and I wake up 6 or 7 or 8 hours later in the exact same position.
Oh, wow.
Just out. Well, you've tried the brain tap. That really changed the game for me and kind of trained my brain
to it's time to relax.
Yeah. Just out. And I don't move, and I'm sorry that I do snore, but I don't move.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
No, it's pretty rare now. Really,
I've been managing my inflammation more intensively, and boy, does that make a difference.
It does. I can tell when my inflammation's getting ready to go up because the bottom of my feet hurt when I wake up in the morning when I walk. So I know that I've done something wrong, whether it be food or a food that's normally okay, I just overdid. Last night I overdid chia seed. Because it's a
That's
seed.
A thing? You can do that. Oh,
well,
that's such bad news.
My body can do that.
Yeah.
My body. So let me tell you what I did last night. I was craving sweets. And so for everybody on this podcast, something I'm very open with is I have an autoimmune disease called Sjogren's. And my marker for Sjogren's was literally off the charts. I've never talked to anybody with a marker as high as mine. So when I first got the news back from my doctor, you have an autoimmune disease. Like literally, that's what it said. You have an autoimmune disease. That very first day, I went off all gluten and dairy. And then as we put me on meds to start compensating for my disease, part of it to give me saliva, I was able to, if I was on my meds and my saliva stopped, I was able to pinpoint a food within 20 minutes of eating it.
So with Sjogren's, your saliva stops?
And my tears stop. Lymphoma is a side effect of Sjogren's.
That's going to mess with your digestive system a little bit.
Yeah. So I started just eliminating things. And I'm starting to understand certain things, which I won't get into all the technicalities of it. But what happens is seeds, like if you're on a true anti-inflammatory protocol, no seeds, no nuts.
Seeds are not on the menu, yeah.
Yeah. And chia is a seed, but I can't have cane sugar anymore. So every once in a while I take a can of coconut milk and I mix it with about 2 or 3 tablespoons of chia seeds. And when I say tablespoons, or heaping tablespoons. And I might put a little of my homemade oat milk in there or something, and a little maple syrup and cinnamon, stir it up, let it sit in the fridge. I forgot I made some a couple days ago. Okay. Now, normally, this is like 5 nights of dessert.
This is like a super natural tapioca pudding.
Yes,
exactly.
Exactly.
And so what wound up happening last night, my dinner was a glass of red wine and the entire 5
But
days.
that's still on the menu.
If
Not
it's dry,
inflammatory at all. Anyway.
if it's dry, it's fine.
Okay.
But I also don't have it every night.
Right.
And it's just a glass, right? And I mean, we're talking, I'm a person that might have one drink a week. So, and I can't have most of the other things these days. So anyway, that was my dinner last night, was this 5-day supply of chia pudding.
gotta get those calories in.
And then I
somehow.
realized I had no saliva going to bed. And I'm like, this is not good. So
Oops.
anyway, yeah. That's okay.
You don't have to be perfect all the time.
No, you
but
don't.
I find the cleaner I eat, the more I notice it when I'm naughty. And last night's fundraiser was a dessert dash, and
Yeah.
oof is right. I haven't had sugar except for a few exceptions for 6 months.
Yeah.
And it was really good and well worth it. And, in the midst of it, Marty and I were going, oh, we should do this fundraiser for Kickin Cancer. And then I'm thinking, wait a minute, we're trying to teach people not to get cancer.
Yeah.
This is not.
And that's a good point, because for me, I actually had gone over a year without any cane sugar, and I was at a barbecue one day, and they had a Korean pork, and then somebody who has a very similar diet to me brought a whipped topping that they were like, well, you could probably have this. I'm like, it's sugar, but you know what? I haven't had sugar in over a year. And so
What could go
between
wrong?
that and probably some of the industrial processed seed oils in there, I got home that night, no kidding, I had no alcohol in me, and the room was spinning like I was drunk. I had to go lay down. So yeah, no cane sugar for this lady.
Yeah.
So you saw me we were at a potluck yesterday.
Yeah.
And I had shrimp, I had the deviled eggs, and I had fruit.
Yeah.
And I could only have the deviled eggs because I made them. I knew what was in them.
I appreciated that.
Yeah.
I had them too. Potlucks are they can cause anxiety when you have a limited diet. It's
Yep.
okay, bring what you can eat, and I don't have I have sensitivities, but I'm not allergic to anything.
Right.
There's no canary in the coal mine for me. I
Right.
just know better.
Right.
And for me, I grew up with an eating disorder. So for me, once I get started, there's no shut off valve. So I just need to not start. I need to and it just I look at it like this is an incredible opportunity to exercise discipline, because
Right.
there's something in there that is going in, get your arm out of the way.
Right.
So it's just easier to it's just not on the menu.
Got it.
For me, I think I have a lot more allergies than I really
He does.
know. I know I'm allergic to latex, and there's so many fruits and vegetables. that
Oh
have
yeah,
natural
I think
occurring
that
latex.
automatically means no bananas for you.
Yeah, I
Such
eat
a bummer.
Watermelon,
Mm-hmm.
tomatoes. I know that those I can tell. I love them.
Mm-hmm.
I eat them. I don't eat a lot of tomatoes, but certain fruits and vegetables have that natural occurring latex, and so I can tell. But I think there's a lot of things, and I have a huge sweet tooth. So at the potluck at Generations yesterday, I had 3 little cupcakes and a big cupcake and a cookie, and then last night
And cake.
and cake, and then last night I had 2 pieces of cake from the dessert dash. So I had a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
I drank so much coffee yesterday. I think
Yeah.
I had 8 double shots
Oof.
of espresso all day.
He was hurting this morning.
So let's do this. Cheers.
Yeah.
Well, and what happens is it's you don't feel good, and then you kind of have a tendency to go into all of your addictions, because the
Right.
brain is imbalanced and out of ease.
Right. And that actually, so then it brings it back into the work environment.
Everything affects everything.
It does. I had an employee come up to me once. She goes, because I've never had COVID, but I think I must have. I think I have long COVID. And I said, it's younger, so this is not menopause, brain fog kind of stuff. But I recognized, I said, you need to go have a full blood workup and have them check your thyroid, and you need to have an ANA run, and you need answers. And you might not get answers, but these are the things you need to request based on what, because that's the other thing with me having an autoimmune disease, it mimics long COVID.
Interesting.
And so and that's where in the world of HR we have accommodations. So if you're an employer with 10 or more employees and somebody has an illness you are bound by law to sit down, have a conversation. They call it the interactive process.
Interactive process.
Process. I like the way you said that.
You are to have a conversation with them, and usually employers require a doctor's note with some suggestions. It depends on what's going on. If somebody comes to me and says migraines, the first thing I'd always do is have the ballast changed in the fluorescent lights. 90% of the times that's going to be the cause. But yeah, we're bound by law for what's called a reasonable accommodation. And the term reasonable is loose, but basically it means the deeper the pockets, the more you need to be willing to pay to make sure this person can get their job done to a standard of productivity that's acceptable.
It's fascinating to know that because I've been in workplaces where they have fluorescent lights. Fluorescent lights just tank me.
Oh, yeah.
I can literally feel it draining my battery and the headache at the back of my...
I actually had an employee that had 2 epileptic attacks at work. The first one they also discovered during that she was low on iron. So the first thing I did as the HR person, I sent her a little care package of Floridix, right? Like, just good luck, hon, you know. She was freaking out because she'd been fired for having an epileptic seizure at work.
That's not legal.
It's not legal. But in our environment, I'm sending her iron because she told me what happened on her blood test. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Happened a second time. A second time, our accommodation was we required that entire department to get certified in first aid and CPR.
Wow. That's actually kind of cool.
And we were able to find the trigger of her. We were able to find the trigger of her epileptic seizure. What we believed, I had left before to know if that was absolutely the case or not. But we think we found the trigger, and we were able to send maintenance in to go fix. It was a very specific light in a very specific spot.
HR isn't what I thought it was. There's a lot of confusion around it, and I know it's not just me.
Right. So this is the easiest way I describe HR to people who aren't in HR. When you have a business that has machines, you have a maintenance person. And their job is preventative maintenance, corrective maintenance, replacement maintenance. That's all HR is for people. Preventative maintenance, that's your regular ongoing training. I call it don't be an asshole training, but it's your regular harassment training, stuff like that. How to be a good supervisor, how to give good communication, good reviews, things like that. That's all under the nature of preventative maintenance.
Interesting.
You do that on a regular cycle. You have corrective maintenance, which other people call PIPs or performance improvement plans. That's when you sit down and have the difficult conversation of things aren't working right. What can we do to fix it?
That's after someone's been an asshole.
Yes.
Okay.
or
before, during, and
or in my world, it could be they call out sick a lot or they're late a lot. Like sometimes they just don't realize. Like sometimes I've actually sat down a paper in front of a person with every single date of work for the past 6 months, and then I'll have marked next to it late, absent, late, absent, 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 late, 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 right? And I'm like, do you realize that 65% of the time your team can't count on you? Sometimes just a straight up conversation like that is all it takes for people to go, oh, like your team, like, and then there's a whole math equation. We're not even going to get into the math equation that I use on people, but I say use on people. But when you walk people through the actual cost of being late, how it isn't just their paycheck, it is taking the supervisor off the job. It's taking somebody else off the job. You get them caught up. The entire team loses because one person might be chronically 15 to 30 minutes late. So that's what HR is. It's human resources. These people are providing a resource for the company to work. This is the person in charge of it. That's like a lot of the reasons the name of human resources is moving to people.
People resources?
People manager.
People manager.
Head of people.
Human reaction.
Yeah, it's really, that's why they're moving to, because human resource, we don't want to refer to our people like machines. You know,
how nice.
Yeah.
It's so
and
cool.
refreshing.
Yeah, it's so cool to get different perspectives. I mean, I don't think I've never worked for like a large corporation, but I mean, like school district, there's a lot of people.
That's huge. Yeah.
That's a corporation.
But most of my life has been, small businesses or now being my own small business.
Right.
Small business owners.
Right.
So there's really never been an issue with HR at the school district there was that not involved with me, but a lot of peers.
Right. And that's the hard thing. There's a lot in HR. Back when I had my podcast, The Rebellious Recruiter, and the tagline was Defying Best Practices, there's a lot in HR that's stuck in this concept of best practices. And it's not even that it's not equitable, it's just that it's BS. When you're dealing with best practices, there's a lot of common wisdom out there that when you really think about it and you understand brain science, you're like, why are we doing this? So that's one of the things that I try to bring.
Who put these rules into place?
Well,
Who wrote
it's
this
not
script?
even like a rule. Like the standard protocol for harassment in a work environment, you'll see in handbooks it'll say something that sounds very logical. Try to work it out. Okay? Now, do you guys know scientifically why that is really bad, even though it's common wisdom?
Because wisdom isn't common?
Cause conflict?
It's actually brain science. This is actual science. So the first time I heard this was Michelle Weiner Davis, who is a couples counselor specializing in dead bedrooms, and I think she's out of Toronto. And she says, well, when you reject your partner, and she says it very gently on this TED Talk, right? They feel pain, it hurts. Then there is a researcher, a neuroscientist, PhD, who does workplace evaluations. Her name is Britt Andriata, and I sat in her seminar, and she says, yeah, so we put these sensors on someone's brain, and wouldn't you know it? She says, when they get alienated or bullied, it lights up as if they're being physically assaulted. Now, why should you tell somebody who's being physically assaulted to work it out?
Because it's not safe. They don't feel safe. They go limbic.
Exactly.
And now we have...
And then we say, well, go talk to them about it, and if it doesn't work, come back to me. What kind of manager or human response is that? And
lousy one.
Yeah. So I literally changed the training to human response, struggles of power, focusing on Dr. Keltner, the human condition and needing to connect, even if you're an introvert.
So at that point, you're part psychiatrist.
Yeah. But I'm trying not to fix the past because I'm not licensed. I'm not a licensed therapist. Yeah. All I'm trying to do is what's happening now. What's happening now is we're sending people into the fire to be physically assaulted again before we believe them.
Yeah. So what's showing up for you?
Yeah. So, when I changed the training, the supervisors really started getting much more assertive about how they handled conflicts in their team, which was great for me because then I'm not dealing with the fallout of it. I'm at the start of it so that we can dial it in a lot faster.
So now as a freelancer, what's your sweet spot? What's the, like the neighbor restaurant has a help wanted sign on the, and I've tried to connect you, as you know.
Oh, yeah.
They're so busy in it. Goob's next door. Yeah. They're so, busy in their 5-alarm fire they're having, one thing after another, new restaurant.
Right.
Always short on helpers, and so they're working 3 jobs or 5. Obviously, that's not your sweet spot. I digress. What is the sweet spot for you?
My sweet spot, most of my experience has been in recruiting, but really where it started developing is when I really started focusing my recruiting on retention.
Go into, what do you mean by recruiting?
So recruiting,
you use these words like we understand them.
Right,
I know
exactly.
what it means, but land that plane.
In the world of HR, recruiting is putting the ad out there, interviewing people, checking references, getting them a start date, right? Okay. That's recruiting, very basic nutshell. However, in my world, in a world of defense, because at one point I was the only recruiter for a company with 2,000 people and I was getting 60 to 70 voicemails a day. That's not counting the calls I was taking, not counting the work I was doing, meeting with managers, sitting in interviews, screening resumes, doing, reference checks, the whole 9 yards. I stumbled into something which was the IT department called and what do you want on the website? We're getting ready to rebuild it. And I'm like, I can have anything I want? They're like, yeah. I took all the common questions I had and had to deal with and all the common voicemails I had, and I put them all on a frequently asked page on the website.
Yay.
10 years later, my words are still on that website. This is through a merger, through 2 website iterations. They've kept my words out there because, it's the second most hit page on their website when I left with 10,000 unique visitors a month.
Wow.
Communication. So what I've learned from this is the science of retention is actually communication. Now, we all talk about clear communication, but it dawned on me today. I was actually having a one-to-one with another one of our members who's also a chapter success coach. And it dawned on me as we were talking about like new members and this and that. I said, the big thing about retention is it's communication, but it's beyond that. It's no surprises. So I can say be a good communicator, or I could say communicate to eliminate surprises. And in the world of hiring employees, it's about eliminating the surprise. It's putting everything out there. So what I like to work with, and I've done this a few times, is rebuild an entire communication plan, which most people do it now virtually, websites. It's different talking to your potential client than it is talking to your potential employee who takes care of the client. And so it's learning, how do we reframe what an ad looks like? You don't post a schematic to a car, you post a picture of a complete car. Why do we post job descriptions when we should be posting the highlights of what's really happening throughout the day? Who are the people you work with? What are the flaws? People really need to talk about their work flaws, because that's why people leave. They get surprised.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a big selling point. We're very disorganized and chaotic. Like, sign me up.
But you can say, hey, most of us like to shoot from the hip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, high energy and...
Yeah, there are ways of saying that it will attract the person you need. Or you could say, we like to shoot from the hip and we realize this has been a problem. We're looking for this highly organized person. And when I worked for a company, we were hiring a new office manager, and I took her to this back room, and I'm like, we can't keep this organized. And she was like, I get to do whatever I want with this? And it was a food company. I'm like, yeah. And she goes, what happens when it's like expired? I'm like, well, it's actually good beyond the expiration. We just give it to the employees. And she's like, I could take some of this home. I'm like, would you like to take home some of this high quality olive oil right now? Mm-hmm. It was really cool to be able to do that. So like that lit her up. Like, this is a problem. We can't do it. But if somebody's like, oh my God, I got to clean up after someone else. Yeah. Like, they would have let me know in that moment, in that interview, like, oh my God, no. Mm-hmm. And instead, like,
or that's a deal breaker. Can we write that out of the agreement?
Exactly. And that was something I couldn't write out because none of us had the skill, or else it would have been organized. So it's little things like that. It's just no surprises. Could you imagine if I would have hired a neatnik that doesn't like to clean up after people, or feel like I've already done that all day at home? Why should I do that at work? So I'm sorry.
Carlos Baca and me had this thing during our podcast.
Yeah.
And every time he got a new watch and it's connected to his phone, mm-hmm. and he couldn't get it to shut off.
Oh yeah.
And so every time it went off, which was like 6 times during the filming, we did the thing where we go, ooh.
Yeah. Well, my thing is, my daughter has 7.5 hours of dance a week.
Oh.
And so even though she's not with me this week, I forgot to turn off my weekly alarms for her. And that was my go pick her up from school alarm. Because if I don't have that...
I remember having those. I had alarms.
This week.
I had the first alarm would go off in case I was across town. And then I had another alarm that went off in case I was close.
Yeah.
Because Vancouver, you can pretty much get anywhere within 20 or 30 minutes, But yeah, when you're picking them up from school, you got like this 5-minute window where it's just like there's nothing, and then and then there's nothing.
So I've learned with
and
her,
you have to be there in that window.
If I pick her up 10 minutes from school late, a lot better. And then in the mornings, there's a whole thing with the parking lot structure that I discovered. If I drop her off in the middle of the parking lot and make her walk, 30 yards further to school, and then I U-turn into the back part of the parking lot, and then I can go out back part, I can have her dropped off in under 3 minutes while people are waiting in line for 15.
Good job, Mama. Yeah. There's a better way to do that. That's, I'm a strong believer in how you do anything is how you do everything. And that just says so much. I'm going to find an easier way to do this that gets the job done. Good job, Mom.
I know. I've always used to tell people I'm a lazy recruiter because I had templates for everything. I'm like, because I don't want to recreate the wheel once it
works. No.
Like,
copy paste.
Template for everything. And I probably had at one point like 32 different signatures on Outlook. But it I had people interviewing in multiple locations, and so each one had very specific instructions. It was before we all had like access to GPS on our phones and stuff. Or in one situation, it was a certain area of Seattle where the GPS just didn't work. So they had to have very specific instructions because at this point your GPS will stop working. So this is what you have to look for, how far you're going to be driving. When you turn right, this is how you know you're in the correct lane. You're going to think you're going the wrong way. You're going to get to the top. You'll see our logo in the distance,
Yeah.
And people would come in and go, those are some of the best directions I ever had. It's
How were my directions for you?
yeah, they were great.
Okay.
But I've been here before. It was just silly because it's like I still don't know Vancouver that well. So
But I mean, even if you hadn't been here, because Google is going to take you to Subway and it's a train wreck.
And I remember the first time that happened to me, I was circling the parking lot like, what the heck is going on here?
I don't know how to fix Google, but
I think there's a way you can report it.
Yeah, you have to do
done
it
that.
like continuously.
Yeah.
And then it redirects the little map, the little red
Yeah,
icon
what
in
you
Google Maps.
and you probably need to start telling everybody who comes here, hey, by the way, do a GPS for Google and tell them to say this is wrong.
good idea.
But yeah, that's oops, sorry, I didn't mean to touch the
No,
microphone.
you're fine.
Was this thing on?
You're totally fine. You know what? I wish we could keep going on this, but we'll just have to do another one
It's all
next
right.
time. Yeah. But I want to thank you, honey, Mikki. Should I call you honey?
You can call her whatever you
My
want.
wife.
That's not true.
My wife,
Oh, it's
my
not
wife.
true.
Call me whatever you want. Be careful with that. Words are powerful.
Oh, I didn't think about that. I was just thinking the difference between Mikki, my wife, my business cohort, my
yeah.
BNI companion, whatever.
Last night he introduced me as Michelle. I'm like,
No, I started to because
I think he started to, and then he paused, and then I'm like, "What's her face?" My wife. But
That's-
we do have a sense of humor, so it was fun.
Yeah.
well, I mean, a lot of times people, are you Martin or Marty?
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
I don't know why, but for some reason I was like,
My
I
wife, Michelle.
don't know. I think it's because her voter pamphlet says Michelle and her previous married name.
And that's stuck in
And
his brain.
Something else came in the mail yesterday, like 3 things that are Michelle. So it's just was stuck in my head. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I had a dream about Michelle.
Yeah. My
'Cause I
name.
never call her Michelle. I always call her Mikki.
I was gonna say with my name, I'll answer to a lot of variations of my name. I will only correct you.
What do you
if
get most?
Daava.
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 Daava, darling. Thank you.
I mean, that's not
Yes.
even that much of an insert. It's kind of exotic.
It's
but so's Daava, so-
understandable, but I've just learned telling people I will only correct you if I think our relationship is going beyond today.
Oh, funny.
Otherwise, it's not
Let that. Please make a note of it.
right. Otherwise, it is not worth the energy because that girl is just calling me back to the doctor office or whatever.
Right. Or have
And-
people spell my name.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't care. I'm at Starbucks. You're never going to spell it again.
I know.
I'm over it.
And poor Starbucks employees, every once in a while, they're like, well, how do you spell that? And then I tell them, and they look at me, I'm like, believe me, you would have never guessed it. Nobody has
Right.
ever guessed it.
There's
So,
15 ways to spell Mickey.
yeah.
I want to thank both of you for being here today. And Daava, what? Daava.
Daava, darling.
Goofball. Yes.
Daava. What's it?
Daava.
What is a good referral for you?
I've been wondering about this myself lately. I would say the number one good referral is when you hear people say no one wants to work anymore. That's the number one. Or we're getting bottom barrel applicants, right? There's an entire conversation people have in their heads when they read your ads. So what are you doing to make your company attractive to the right people? Because nowadays, really the game is not to get as many applicants as possible. It's to get as few but highly interested as possible.
Quality over quantity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I would say those are the top 2. I'm looking for, smaller businesses are good. Mid-sized businesses are better, less than 75 employees. But I could take on projects with larger businesses. But that's what's great about the world of HR. I do a lot with professional services, but I love working in the blue-collar space. I mean, there is something about getting to talk to people that are welders by trade or framers or painters. I mean, we have a guy in our BNI chapter, Jesse Bremen, and I actually, I hadn't met him yet, but I'd met other guys like him. I was talking about in my world, I have people called plug and plays and battle axes. And he's a battle axe. Like, he's really good at one thing, and that's paint, right? Like, this is the guy that geeks out watching paint dry. And I actually use that as an example. Like, who your battle axe is like, they so geek out on that. That's what they do. So yeah, these are the people that want a healthier like workforce. Like, what does that look like? Those are the companies I want to work with. So,
what's the best way to introduce you? Then everybody has their own.
Ooh, that's a good question. I think the best way to introduce me is, this is Daava, and I've written some blogs. Sometimes it's helpful to send a blog out. This is, some of the tools that she uses. Right now, every time I get introduced to somebody, I'm like, oh, by the way, shameless self-promotion. Here's a blog I wrote on hiring disasters.
How does somebody find your blog?
I will send you a link. I have an older one actually online right now at daava.me, and I'm working on updating that. And then I just did one recently for Boutique COO, another BNI member down in Portland. They asked me to do a guest blog recently. And then I did one for a technology company last year in Massachusetts about living with autoimmune diseases. But anyway, so those are some ways to refer me. And the other thing is, the good old introduction. You'll notice when I send out an introduction, I'm like, hey, this is Mikki. Let me tell you a little bit about Mikki, what makes her special. And then this is who I'm introducing to. This is what makes them special. And this is why you should talk. So for them, it's like, she knows all things recruiting. She's really helpful with policies, difficult conversations, and what I call check the box training, preventative maintenance, your people preventative maintenance. Those would be really good ways of introducing me.
That's
and I
very
know that
helpful.
was a lot, and I know I spidered out, but yeah.
It's okay. And I'll put your contact information too at the end of the podcast.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you.
Mikki, Michelle, honey, my wife. Stay tuned, everybody, for an episode with Mikki and myself, and that'll be coming up pretty soon. And then we're going to get all of your information, Mikki, Michelle, honey, my wife. Thanks for joining us today.
Aren't we, though?
Thank you so much, Daava.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Daava.